The rotor blades thundered against the early morning sky, slicing through the thick desert air as the Black Hawk sat waiting on the tarmac, its metal frame trembling under the rising heat. The soldiers moved like clockwork, voices blending into the hum of engines, the grind of gears, and the rhythm of war. Among them was Specialist Riley Hart, small in stature, quiet in presence, yet every movement she made was deliberate, practiced, and steady. Her gloved hands tightened the last bolt on the weapon's mount as the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon. The faint reflection glimmered against her wrist, a mark she usually kept hidden. She wasn't supposed to be noticed. She preferred it that way. For months, Riley had kept her head down, working tirelessly through sleepless nights, fixing birds that brought soldiers home or carried them to their fate. But today something was different. The base buzzed with unusual tension, a surprise inspection, a visiting commander from the upper chain of command, and an unspoken silence among the crew who knew when to keep their mouths shut. She didn't look up when the sound of boots echoed behind her. She just kept working, unaware that her past, the one she had buried deep beneath layers of silence and scars, was about to collide with her present. The commander's shadow fell across her as she reached into the weapons bay, the sunlight now cutting through the hangar doors. He was a man who carried authority like a storm, cold, precise, and unforgiving. Commander Daniel Rhodes, decorated, respected, and feared. His voice usually carried command like steel, but when he stopped behind her and saw the faint lines on her wrist as she reached forward, his expression changed. His breath caught. For a moment, the roaring hangar became quiet, too quiet. The tattoo. It wasn't just any tattoo. It was a small black falcon clutching an arrow, its wings half shattered, inked over faded scars. Only one group had ever worn it, the Night Falcons, a covert rescue and recovery unit that had been disbanded years ago after a mission gone horribly wrong. Every member had either been declared dead or missing in action. Every member, except one. Rhodes froze where he stood. His pulse pounded in his temples as the memories flooded back. The burning wreckage, the radio silence, the desperate calls for help that never came. He had read her name on a casualty report nearly 5 years ago. Riley Hart, KIA, yet there she was, standing in front of him, alive, her back straight, hands working with mechanical precision, as if she'd never left the battlefield. Riley didn't notice his gaze until the silence around her thickened. When she turned slightly and caught sight of him, their eyes met, and in that split second, both of them were pulled back into the storm of that night. She could almost smell the smoke again, hear the screams, feel the explosion rip through the chopper as fire lit up the sky. She had been the only one to crawl out alive, dragging 2 others through burning sand before the air support finally came. She had watched friends die in her arms, and when she recovered, she asked to disappear, changed her file, buried her identity, and chose the wrench over the rifle. But Rhodes had seen too much, and the truth never stayed buried forever. He didn't say a word that day. He just stood there as she finished her work and saluted him out of habit, unaware that his silence came from shock and guilt. He had been the mission commander that night, the one who gave the order to move forward into the ambush, the one who had to sign off on the casualty list that declared her dead. For the next few days, word spread quietly through the base, whispers of who Riley really was. Some thought it was a rumor. Others didn't care. But for Rhodes, it became an obsession. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. The face of the young woman he had sent into hell kept flashing in his mind. One morning, he went to the hangar before sunrise, determined to face her, to say something, anything. But when he arrived, she was already there, her uniform smudged with oil, humming faintly under her breath as she checked the helicopter's hydraulics. He just watched her, finally realizing the truth. She wasn't running from glory. She was running from memory. Every scar, every quiet moment alone in that hangar was her way of coping with the ghost that never left. When he finally spoke, his voice broke slightly, rough from years of command but heavy with regret. "I thought you were gone." She didn't look at him at first. Her eyes stayed on the rotor blade, her hands moving steadily. Then softly she said, "Maybe I am." That answer shattered him, because he knew what she meant. Over the weeks that followed, something shifted. Rhodes began to visit the hangar more often, not as a commander but as a man trying to make peace with the past. Riley kept to her duties, but little by little she began to speak. Fragments of memory, small stories, bits of pain. He learned that after the crash she had spent 6 months in a field hospital, unable to walk, haunted by survivor's guilt. When the Army offered her a medical discharge, she refused. Instead, she took a maintenance position under a new identity, determined to serve quietly, without recognition, without reminders of what she'd lost. Then came the day of the mission, a last-minute deployment, a rescue op deep in hostile territory. The Black Hawk she had armed was going in heavy under fire. Rhodes was set to lead the command from base, but just before takeoff, the pilot went down sick. They needed someone to fill in fast, someone who knew the systems, who could keep the bird alive under pressure. Without hesitation, Riley volunteered. Everyone tried to stop her, but the fire in her eyes said otherwise. As she strapped in, Rhodes stood on the tarmac, his chest tight with fear. She turned once before the doors closed, gave him a small nod, the same kind of nod soldiers give before stepping into the unknown. Hours later, when the helicopter returned, riddled with holes but carrying the rescued team alive, Rhodes was the first to reach her. She was sitting on the ramp, uniform torn, face streaked with grease and tears, the black falcon tattoo catching the light again. In that moment, the commander who had once thought her dead saluted her, not as a subordinate, but as a warrior who had carried the weight of silence for far too long. The crew around them fell silent, realizing they were witnessing something far deeper than rank or duty. It was redemption. That night, the base mess hall fell into a respectful hush when Rhodes stood and announced her name to the room. Sergeant Riley Hart, formerly of the Night Falcons. The applause that followed wasn't loud or wild. It was slow, heavy, and filled with awe. She didn't seek the spotlight. She never did. But when she walked out into the cool desert night, the stars reflected off her eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe, really breathe, because she finally understood. Survival wasn't just about living through the fire. It was about choosing to rise from it. And that hidden tattoo, once a mark of pain, had become a symbol of everything she'd fought to keep. Loyalty, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond of those who never stop fighting, even after the war ends. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in strength, sacrifice, and second chances. Special request: comment below. For the fallen who still rise. To honor every silent hero who carries their scars with pride.